How do we stick to habits and routines? You know, a lot of people nowadays, they want to learn something new, for example, and you need some kind of time to get to know it. But then as you start, you get along well in the first week, maybe the second one, but then you fall short, doesn't create the habit, and you don't learn it. Or you're trying to create the routine of, going to the gym, exercising, doing something for your own well-being, but you can't seem to get it. Let's try to learn it today with the help of the Hierophant, which is the 5th matrix character. So you're going through some topics today. First one is going to be rituals, which is related to habits and routines. Then learning and teaching, magnetism, and this crazy symbol, the pentagram. So first of all, talking about rituals. See, we as humans have a lot of rituals. You don't maybe stop to think about it, but your whole life, most of it, is a ritual. You wake up, you do things in a very specific way. And sometimes if you cannot do them in this very specific way, it just doesn't seem right to you. For example, you may wake up and then you probably just check your phone, and then you go to the bathroom, and then you use the bathroom, wash your hands, maybe then you go to eat some type of breakfast or something, or you don't eat, you fast in the morning, doesn't really matter. But the thing is, you're gonna strictly play the same life over and over throughout the days. And then the weekend comes, you do some partying time or whatever, and if you don't get away from this robot-like routine, you cannot change things. So the first thing to understand is the rituals which we are stuck to. And not even gonna mention too much of this, but we also, because of the calendar, use a lot of rituals in specific days. So when you think of Christmas, New Year's, Easter, or any of the festivals that you may have in your culture, you're basically doing a ritual, a specific ritual, to celebrate something. So not all rituals are bad. As a matter of fact, there's no such thing as a bad or good ritual. It's just an example that as life goes, you're going to keep repeating things, okay? And this is the value of doing something. So when you're doing, for example, when you just go out and drink out of habit, then that isn't necessarily as good as if you were to drink as a ritual. If you made that thing, that drinking time with friends, for example, an important thing, that's the difference between just using something and the intention of using that to reach a certain goal or to enjoy a specific experience. Now, when we are talking about creating habits, creating routines, the first thing to understand is that we are impermanent beings. So the idea of creating one routine which will follow for the rest of your life is something crazy. The best thing you can do is try to understand what is your goal right now, what do you need to do in order to reach that goal, and if that's something that you need to constantly do, like do daily, weekly, and so on, then you work towards creating a routine. First thing, which should be obvious, is if you don't mark anywhere that you should do it, you're likely going to forget, especially nowadays with cell phones, with a lot of things going on. So the usage of an agenda, for example, of sorts, is going to be very helpful. It can be an electronic one like a Google Calendar or something like this, or even a simple to-do in a block note that you put yourself. You put date and you put whatever you set out to do. If you don't express this somewhere, it's going to be really hard to remember what you have to do and stick to it. So the first thing is externalize it, put it somewhere. I would suggest you do somewhere like physical, like in a paper, or like really an agenda. You buy those agendas and put it there, because otherwise when you put it on your phone, then you're likely to go to your phone and then do something else. Okay. But this is really the secret here. When you externalize it, then at least you have now the idea in a way materialized. It's already in physical reality, okay? And the more energy you put into it, the more it's likely to occur. And something you need to keep in mind is the idea of momentum, okay? Because if you start something, it's kind of like a train. When the train is stopped here, okay, this is my train. When it's stopped, it doesn't have any velocity. But if it's moving really, really fast, then nothing can stop it. It's running. It's really hard to stop it. So that's the power of rituals, for example. And we don't think about it, but when you go to some certain ceremonies, what you're doing is really just rituals. You're just repeating specific actions in order to have a certain outcome. So if you stick to having an agenda, ideally, like I said, in the physical world, let's say, in paper or something, and you start to build this momentum of, you can even try to hack your brain and say, okay, I'm just gonna do it today. You know, it's just today, and then you do it. And then the next day comes and you say again, so it's just today. And you keep doing this over and over until it's like second nature. But what you don't have to do, and you shouldn't do, is like be hard on yourself when you cannot follow the routine, because this just makes you go into a downward spiral of, oh, I cannot do this, and so on, so on, and it's not helpful. So the best thing you can do is focus on solutions. So for example, if you are trying to go to the gym and you didn't go on a specific day, and it was because, I don't know, it was raining or something, just try to remove all the coping mechanisms that you can. So for example, if going to the gym is too far out, buy some gym equipment at home. So at least if you cannot go outside, you do something inside. Like try to find ways to adapt to the situations, and don't go crazy if you fall short on one day or something. Just keep doing it, you know? It's gonna be easier on yourself. Now, that being said, I guess we covered rituals for now. Another important thing to understand from the Hierophant, which we have 3 tarot cards here, is the idea of learning and teaching something. So we have here this blade, which is the mythic tarot. It has a lot of Greek stories, and this Greek story is the story of Chiron. So as you can see, he's in a cave. So we already talked about this in the unconscious video, where the cave is going to be the depths of your mind. And he's here ready to teach you something. Now, whenever you want to learn something new, guess what? You're going to need some kind of ritual, some kind of initiation into the subject. And if you don't stick towards creating that momentum of learning and putting that into your mind more and more and more, it's very unlikely that you're going to learn it. So if you have to learn, I don't know, how to drive, how to get your driver's license, if you don't put this as a thing you have to do consistently, it's going to be very hard for this knowledge to come into you. So it's something that you have to take into consideration, that the Hierophant teaches us. If you need to learn something, it has to be part of you right now. You have to be, listening about it, like reading about it and doing. The more and more you do, the easier it is to learn. And it's easy, to cope that, I don't know, oh, I'm too old for this, or oh, this is too hard for me, and so on. But these are all paradigms that you create. It's really that straightforward. If you want to learn something, just sit down and learn it. And it's likely that you're going to learn it faster than you think about it. Because for most things, there's like if you get any topic, let's take programming, right? And let's assume that this is everything there is to know about programming. The thing is, when you don't know nothing about it, you're like, okay, you're not even a point inside here. When you start to learn some things about it, you start to grow, okay? And now you're like this little point. And then you learn more and you're like a circle, a little bit bigger than that, and so on and so on. The thing is, depending on your goal, usually when you're a small circle inside everything there is to know about programming, this is already enough. For example, if you're someone who learned programming, I don't know, in 3 months, you already know most than the majority of people. And you're in a position even to start teaching a little bit, which to me, I'm kind of biased, but to me, it's the best way to learn. Because not only you need to, if you want to be a good teacher, you need to really understand the fundamentals and everything so that the other person can also learn it. But then it's easier on you because now you have a responsibility towards another person. Then it's easier to say like, okay, no, I have to learn it because I have to teach another person, than to just put the burden on yourself. Like, I have to learn it because I need to do something, right? So it's kind of tricky, but it's easy when there's someone else involved, at least for me personally. But the point here is that you likely don't need to learn that many stuff. Let's say when you're learning a language, think of how many words a language has. Even native speakers, they don't know all the words. But when you're just learning it, you need a couple of words to start playing with the thing. And the more you play, the more you exercise, the better you get at the thing that you're doing. So that's another teaching from the Hierophant. And next one is going to be the magnetism. So as you can see here, Chiron is doing a hand sign like this. And we also have up here, you cannot see it because it's probably too small, but the priest is doing something like this with his hand, okay? The idea of magnetism is this energy that permeates things which we cannot see. Electricity works in this way as well. But the magnetism that we are talking about here is the same one that keeps together the 4 elements that we learned in the other characters. So when we were talking about the magician, for example, the magician, he's earth, like we already saw, okay? So this is earth. Then we have the high priestess, which is air. Priestess, which is going to be air. Then we have the empress, and these are all videos you can check out on my page, which is going to be water. And finally, the last one we had was fire, which is the emperor. Okay. Now, when you learn all of these 4 elements, you understand that they must be held together by a 5th element, which is going to be the quintessence. So the 5th essence, right? Or someone else can call it ether or akash. Okay? So this 5th element is holding all of these together. That's why it's the magnetism. You can imagine as like a circle that inside can become anything. If it wants to become air, then it becomes air. If it wants to become fire, it becomes fire, and so on and so on. That's the idea of the magnetism. And that magnetism runs through you. Whenever you hear now the words ki, chi, prana, so on, vital energy, vril, all those things, what they're talking about is this magnetism, this life force, this thing that animates. So the theory of the ether, for example, was that it was this energy that basically was the fluid of the universe, that anything was interacting with it and so on. Well, in theory, science debunked it, but then nowadays we have something called the quantum, what's the word now? Quantum waves, or not necessarily quantum waves, it's the quantum ocean or whatever. I forgot the name right now, but it's the same idea, the same principle, the quantum void. I think that's the name. So we have this idea that everything, if you go down to the middle of it, eventually you're gonna find like cells, and then atoms, electrons, whatever, and then eventually everything is just made out of the same quantum void. which permeates everything. And it's like an ocean, which things come up and go down, and they come up and go down, and so on. There's some really cool visualizations in the YouTube. But the idea is that when you are aware of this energy inside you, you can start to manipulate it. So you can start to, let's say, visualize that a ball of energy is in your hands, or that energy runs through you. That's the idea when you're doing martial arts, when you're doing yoga, or Qigong, Tai Chi, and so on. It's not just a physical thing that you're doing. When you're doing the movements, you should see the energy permeating. And that energy, you can feel it eventually. It's like sometimes it makes you cold, sometimes it makes you hot, doesn't really matter, but it's something that you can feel inside you. And these hand gestures, like this one right here, that the Kiran is doing, or this other one, and so on, and the one in the thumbnail, which is this one right here, well, some cultures may call them mudras. And what they're doing is, by connecting some points, you're telling your whole system to use energy in a certain way. So for example, this one is called the prana mudra, like this. Prana, which is life force, mudra. It's this one right here. Right? I'll do it once again. Sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like this, but that's the idea. You connect the ring finger, the right hand, the ring finger, and the pinky finger with the thumb. So for example, this idea is that you're telling your whole body, your whole system, to permeate this energy more. So it helps with immune system and so on and so on. Now, when you start to learn things like Kabbalah, you can see how each finger, for example, is connected to one of the sephiroths here. I'm not going to be super in depth. If you want, I can make a video out of this. But for example, when we are connecting the ring finger and the pinky finger from the right hand, you're making this connection right here, the sun to Venus. And this would be, for example, this other card, which there's going to be another video about it, but it talks about temperance, harmony, balancing things. And then you start to understand how, even though mudras and prana mudra is not something related necessarily to Kabbalah or Tarot, you can, by learning multiple different things, you start to connect them and seeing how they work. So a really nice practice that I suggest you do is this visualization of the energy. It's not so much visualization, it's like all the senses. You should really feel it. It's like smell it, taste it, everything. Hear the sound of the magnetism and so on. You can start playing around with this. And if you already practice something like yoga, Qigong, any martial arts and so on, this is something you can start to pay attention when you're doing the movements, because the whole body is like fractals inside fractals. That's why, let's say, something like chiromancy works, or iridology, I think it's called, when you read the eyes of someone and so on. This all works because the whole body is a fractal. So whatever is in your hand is the same that is in your whole body, and vice versa. So it's fractals inside fractals. And that's the idea of magnetism. The more you work with it, the more you can actually use it. Because if you have this energy running through you, now you're someone which has more vitality. You can do more things. You feel like stronger and more powerful and so on. So that's the idea, why you would interact with this. And the last but not least is the concept of the pentagram, because as you can already see here, maybe it's too small, but the fifth, well, with 5 points, we can connect and make a star, or the pentagram. I'm gonna make a bigger one right here. So this symbol, we can comprehend it in many different ways. So the first way is to understand that we are a pentagram. We have the head, we have then the body, we have the 2 legs and the 2 arms. So we are a pentagram being. Even the word, for example, Portuguese, we have here serpent, but in Portuguese it's serpente, which ser is being, penci, from penta, from 5, pentagram. Again, this is how Kabbalah works. There's no really fixed grammar here. You just play around with the words. So we are this serpente, again, serpents, right? And this is the same idea that now we understand from, for example, the Kundalini, the two serpents running through us. It's the same vital energy that we are talking about, the magnetism. So really the pentagram is talking about everything that we talk here in this video. So the quintessence, the learning and teaching, the rituals and so on, right? So next time you see this symbol, you understand what it's talking about, the 5 elements, the 5 fingers, okay? And when you see this variation of it, which is the downwards one, it's gonna be something like this. This, okay? So it's downwards. The only difference here is that you're inverting the energy. Instead of it going up towards, you have 7 chakras, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can make a video on the chakras, not gonna be on this one. But when you make the one pointing up, you're making the energy go this way. And when it's going down, you're making it go this way. So really what this type of people, which like to use the symbol, are doing, is they're sending the energy down and making the body use it more. So it's more towards the earthly things than towards the heavenly things. You don't have to be afraid of a symbol, because otherwise it just controls you. So I think this is all for this video. I hope you liked it. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to follow me. If you want to keep seeing the videos, also I'd appreciate if you liked or send me a message or comment or anything, just so I know if this kind of videos is something you would like to see more. And that's it. I hope to see you next. Bye bye.